This is a DMB Society podcast.
I got a sister named Jane.
And this is the pod that Jane likes. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the pod that Jane likes, a very special episode of the pod that Jane likes, because I think, guys, for maybe the third time, I don't know if we have the DMB Society stats pulled out for this, but for maybe the third time ever, the pod that Jane likes is all in the same room recording an episode of the pod. And we're very excited to recap the last couple weeks for Richmond, for Saratoga. We are all together to go to Guilford, and we're really pumped to be able to bring this to you all together. It may be a complete train wreck, so we apologize in advance, but it may be really awesome. And I think we're all gonna, as I said, be really excited that we're all here together. So if you like what you hear from this episode and other episodes of the pod that Jane likes, make sure to give us a follow at all of our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Check us out on YouTube, where you can view this podcast, which may be even better than our normal video podcast, because we're all just sitting here on my couch in my basement as we speak, having a beer and prepping for Guilford. So we're happy that you've chosen to join us, and we've got a lot to talk about. And we're going to start out talking about the week that was in DMB world, which is the shows in Richmond and in Saratoga. So let's do that, guys, in our opening segment that we like to call the opener. Cheers to the opener. Cheers to the opener.
Cheers to you.
It's the tour debut.
Yeah, our tour debut.
All right, so the for the opener, guys, we had 4 shows this past week: 2 in Richmond, 2 in Saratoga. DMB's return to Richmond after over 30 years. Sean, Trisha, you guys were in the house in Richmond. It seemed like there was a lot of great stuff happening. There was a pop-up, which I know we always talk about how much we want the band to do more fan interaction and fan, things. We always talk about, I think the gold standard is DMB 25 in Charlottesville, right? Like all of the pop-up stuff, the van, the poster exhibition, all of that. And there was sort of a scaled back version of that. And I think, Sean and Trisha, you guys were there, so I'll let you speak to what was going on the ground.
Well, what's funny is there was a pop-up. Sanjay, the photographer, had photographs there. We actually got early entry to be in the pit, but the venue didn't quite, this is a big event for the venue, for a brand new venue. They didn't exactly have the timings lined up in a way that we were able to attend the pop-up. The pop-up was about 20 minutes outside of the venue. And then it was interesting. I was getting messages saying, you might not want to come. There's a line out the door. It is packed, which I thought was so awesome, because it was actually overwhelming for people. I mean, I think once people got inside, it was really well run. They had merch, posters. Sanjay had his photographs. So it sounded like it was a wildly successful pop-up event. But Richmond was awesome. It was a brand new venue. And I think the biggest, just to set the stage for all of you, what is the history of Richmond, Sean? Like, how many times have DMB played there? A million? I don't know.
Well, I mean, the big venue in Richmond, way back when, the early-ish days of DMB, was Flood Zone. And Flood Zone had roughly 80 DMB shows over the course of just under 3 years. So an awful lot of performances in a very short span. For the majority of that window, they were playing weekly. So if you lived in the area, it was not uncommon to see DMB almost once a week at your local Richmond club. Now that venue, DMB obviously grew out of, but at the same time, what we didn't realize maybe in that moment was they were kind of growing out of the city of Richmond and the venues that they had all together. So in a lot of ways, of course, DMB is a Charlottesville band, but in a lot of ways, this was a homecoming for DMB.
And I think that's what I want to convey, is like that history Like there were people there with like stickers, "Welcome back to Virginia."
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, we were with someone all weekend who is from Richmond, a big fan. He saw so many shows at Flood Zone that I was like, "So how many shows have you been to?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know." Like, think about it. Like when you go weekly and it's just your normal thing to go weekly, like you lose count.
Right.
So it was cool to kind of be in this environment where there were DMB fans who are from Richmond that travel all over that actually didn't have to travel for the first time in almost 30 years, right? Since their time back in Richmond. So just to set the stage, I can't describe it, but there was something in the air of history and just importance of the band.
Yeah, I bet. I found it. I was, following along. I was stalking you guys while you were down there. And I found that there was a lot of footage of people hanging out outside of the venue. Can you guys explain a little bit of that? Because I thought that was wild and also incredible. Like, what a cool little thing to have, if you don't have to buy a ticket and you still get to enjoy a show. It's pretty cool. So tell me a little bit about that.
So the venue is, as Matt mentioned, brand new. There have been a few acts that played prior to DMB, but DMB was the first artist to be there for a multi-night run. So in some ways, this was the biggest thing to take place at this venue to date. In addition to it being a brand new venue, it's also one of the smallest places that you could see DMB. A little bit over 7,000 people. Quite the dichotomy to what we're going to talk about after Richmond when we get to SPAC, and we're talking about more in the 20,000 range. So a huge difference in terms of venue size. But what Jeanette is talking about, she's right. The way that the venue is situated, so it's right downtown. It really does provide some really cool sweeping views of the Richmond skyline. I thought the venue was beautiful. And the way that it's situated, the lawn, and I guess this is the case in most venues, but as you go from the lawn down, you're increasingly going downhill. However, what Jeanette was referring to is on the outsides of the lawn, because this lawn was so small, there was almost a second lawn, a second viewing area. You did not have to have a ticket to get to this area. I made the comment that some of the views from this free lawn were better than an awful lot of lawns that I've been to in big amphitheaters. Because it is outside of the venue, people brought chairs, people were bringing hard-sided coolers, there were dogs, there was a blow-up couch. It was a free-for-all.
There was a live chicken, right?
There was a live chicken. We can't figure out why the chicken was there. But somebody brought a rooster with them, presumably. Unless the rooster lives there, but it's not Key West, so I don't know what was happening there. But the venue was beautiful, a very, very unique and intimate place to get to see DMB. And my best guess would be that there was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 1,000 additional people outside that were taking in the show both nights, completely free of charge. It was so prevalent that Dave commented on it. He talked about the fact that I can't believe how many people are out here, and made a joke that if the venue knew what was good for them, they would extend the lawn and let all those people come in. It was quite a few people. What a cool way to take in a DMB show.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that I mean, I know you said it was a conservative count, but I was surprised that there weren't more people, because this was a really hot ticket in general. Not only a hot ticket for pits and for lowers, but the show was sold out and people were debating going because it was such a hard ticket. So it's so interesting, when you can look at things on paper, right, and then you get there in person and it's a totally different thing. You probably walk over, you're like, oh, I'm still need tickets for tonight, but actually, if I don't get tickets for tonight, I can still see and hear and experience the show on the sidewalk, basically, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
So really awesome. I'm curious to see what happens in future tours. Does this amphitheater in Richmond become a regular stop? Do we go back to Bristow? I know everybody has a lot of bad things to say about Bristow. I've been there a couple times, and it is, a lot of the stories are true about getting in, getting out. So does Richmond become, the default stop? We'll have to see. But let's talk about the show. Really cool opening to the show, which I think you guys captured beautifully. And there's a video of it on our Instagram of PNP Gray Street to open up the Summer of PNP, The Second Coming returns. And if you're watching on YouTube, you just saw Jeanette is wearing our 2024 now vintage Summer of PNP shirt. And so PNP Gray Street to start the show. We had a Black and Bluebird tour debut. I was very happy to see Drive In, Drive Out again, because as we know, it is what, guys, let's all say it together, criminally underplayed. Yes, thank you. And a lot of other cool stuff in the show. Trisha, do you want to flag some highlights?
You know what my highlight was?
Tell us.
Well, don't send me any death threats, okay? But Drive In, Drive Out was never my favorite song. And it was my highlight of that night. I mean, a PNP Gray Street and a Big Eyed Fish bartender was awesome, but I really just stood there to let Drive In, Drive Out take me. Like
Have its moment.
have its moment. And I was like, holy hell, this is a good song. And I just,
Missing?
I do. Well, I don't know if I've been missing it because they never play it. So
Yeah,
it's, you know what I mean? Like part of this is they're not playing it at live shows. So it's not like you're constantly hearing it
Fair.
all of the time. Right. So I never look for it. I never seek for it because it's never played. So actually I got it and I was like, damn.
Now you know what we're talking about.
I do.
Damn.
The jam was so good. And it just continued. You got the Virginia in a Rain and Black and Bluebird, which for some reason both felt like Virginia songs in some ways. I don't know. Maybe he wrote,
fair.
you know.
Yeah.
All around, just really great energy and people. Hello Again was fun. Say Goodbye was beautiful. I mean, I could go through this whole list, but really kind of the PNP Gray Street, Big Eyed Fish bartender, and Drive In, Drive Out. That beginning of the show was really on fire.
Yeah, that PMP into Gray Street, you know, I was watching on the couch tour and we could all see the 12 string. So we were like, what is it going to be?
I didn't even pick up on that. And I was
Nobody assumed PMP because PMP is not played on the 12 string. So that was a little bit of a shock. What being there, what was that? What was the reaction like from the crowd when that started?
I think your point's a good one because I had the same reaction. PNP never crossed my mind because of the fact that, as you said, it is played on a 6-string. So really, really interesting start to the show. Not only do you get the 12 string to start the show because of Gray Street, but you get a string of 12 string songs in Gray Street, Big Eyed Fish, and Bartender. One thing that I want to point out is we have talked an awful lot in the past about the placement of When the World Ends. And I thought that this was a good example to bring up because When the World Ends is not in any form or fashion a song that I dislike. It's a song rather that at some points became really, really predictable with where you were going to find it. And I just really liked what they did here, the way that they kind of fit it into the set. Gray Street, Big Eyed Fish, Bartender, When the World Ends, Drive In, Drive Out. It just has a whole different vibe than when it's so commonly found in that 2 slot. It's very predictable. It makes it seem like, have I heard this show before? This felt very new, very fresh. Now, granted, it's sandwiched in between Bartender and Drive In, Drive Out, so that's going to happen. It kind of props it up. But I just thought this was a really good example of how important set list writing is and song placement is. It just really fit here. It was fun. It became really easy to kind of get lost in that song because of what was surrounding it. Really fun opening run to this show. Some of the other points that you mentioned, Trisha, I thought were good ones too. Full to Think always stands out for me. It's something that I wish that got a little bit more play. It's a quick hitter, right? It kind of pops up. It's usually a really short run time and then it's gone. But an awful lot of fun. I thought that it was a really good welcome back to DMB into the Richmond area.
I love Fool to Think. I think that's another one of those songs. I know we talked last week about What You Are and how, you know, it's really that and So Right have been established as these live sort of juggernaut songs. And I do think that Fool to Think is one of my favorite songs on every day. Fool to Think and Sleep to Dream Her, I think I always sort of pair those two together as some of my other favorite stuff from every day. So really happy to see Fool to Think be not in regular rotation, but you know, not completely disappear and come back. So so that was cool. Let's jump over to night 2. And we have a Song That Jane Likes opener, which is awesome. Song That Jane Likes and the Stone. I don't know if there's a better way to start a show, honestly. You've got, two just, I think, all-time fan favorite songs. And, this show I thought had a really good flow, not being there, but seeing things like late in the set, a Crash, Proudest Monkey, Typical Situation happen. I know there was a whole situation with Drunken Soldier and Word Up, which you can talk about, but seeing those songs, I always feel like Typical is a late in the set song, right? It's like it's always played right before a closer or a couple of slots before a closer, and I think that's where it belongs. I think it's a great place to put there, and surrounding it with a song like Drunken Soldier and a song like Proudest Monkey. Again, I know that there's some stuff that happened there, but I really thought that was the strongest part here. And of course, ending on two-step, is you can't ever go wrong with that.
Was it the best two-step?
Was it the best two-step that's ever? Was that the best two-step that was ever played? Was there any talk about that on the way out? Did anybody?
Of course.
It was the only thing people were talking about. It was
The best
the
two-step
only
they ever heard.
I love it.
Speaking of the only thing, we did have some guests. We definitely had two guests. We had John Dirth come out for Proudest Monkey and Typical, and we had Joe Lauer come out for The Only Thing. And I will tell you that the Proudest Monkey melted me to my knees. I thought it was so beautiful. John Dirth was beautiful. Tim was beautiful. And that was probably the highlight of what it was a really great show. When you bring Watchtower out in the 6, like
Bring it out in the 6.
the 6th spot, like
Wheel it out. Wheel out. Watchtower in the 6.
I mean, a 6th spot. Everybody's like, how about that mid-set Watchtower? I'm like, that's not even mid-set. That's still the first run.
Yeah. I found this set to be very Virginia, very opening with the song that Jane likes. I mean, Jane was probably in attendance. We could all just assume that.
Hi, Jane, if you're listening.
Hi, Jane. We heard we're your favorite
Thanks for
podcast.
being
We heard you like this pod. But yeah, and then having John Dirth as a guest and also Joe Lawler. I mean, this is where this band is from. So I just think it was a real nod to Virginia in the early days.
no question. And I think as we're talking about guests, John Dirth is in a lot of ways as much of an OG guest as DMB could possibly bring out. John Dirth is a guy a trumpet player who is also a music professor at the University of Virginia, and in some ways has been involved with the Dave Matthews Band longer than the Dave Matthews Band even existed in his musical career. So he felt like the perfect person to bring out for the guest spot that they did. And I completely agree with what has already been said. There were two beautiful performances. I thought that Proudest Monkey quite possibly was the highlight of the 2 nights in Richmond. It was just a really, really great version. It really was. And a historic one in the sense that it was the first ever time that Proudest Monkey and Typical have been played consecutively. So 2 songs that have been in existence since the early-ish 90s. First time that they've been played back-to-back. Another first in this show was in the form of So Right, which was the first time that it has ever closed a main set. I thought that one was a little interesting in the sense that even though it hasn't happened, I thought it fit really well. With that closing track, what at least I prefer is something that can really bring the energy up and really leave the crowd wanting more. So Right is that in a nutshell. It is, I think, time in and time out, one of the most fun DMB songs live. It brings an awful lot of energy. So I thought that the placement of that was great. I hope that it is, while it is the first, I hope that it's not the last. It was a really fun way to end the show, and you leave the audience wanting more. You leave the audience excited for what's about to come in the encore. Night 2 was a pretty strong show, one that I really enjoyed just about from start to finish.
The other 2 things I would just highlight is to what you said earlier, Matt, but they started playing Drunken Soldier and then they completely stopped. and then went into Word Up and then played Drunken Soldier. But at the time, you didn't know they were going to come back to Drunken Soldier. So we were like, did you just abort Drunken Soldier for a Word Up? Like, what's going on here? So, you didn't know. So it was nice that they came back to Drunken Soldier. And then the only thing I would say that I'm going to keep saying is when ABI is played, y'all, are you looking at me? Try to focus only on Buddy playing, because I'm telling you, he is magnificent. And every time I just focus on him during it, I am blown away with what he's doing. PSA.
All right. You heard it here first. Make sure you look over to stage right whenever ABI is played. So thanks guys for that. That's awesome. I really was excited about these shows, was happy that DMB was back in Richmond. I actually, I think it's worth talking about just really briefly. Obviously DMB has such a rich history in Virginia and in Richmond specifically, and obviously in Charlottesville specifically. And I think if you asked anybody who pays attention to things like this about, okay, DMB is going to bring out one guest from this area, other than Joe, because Joe's on tour with the band all the time, but going to bring somebody out, I think we all would have 100% said John Dirth, right? Sure. John Dirth always shows up in Charlottesville. He's, I think, still really tight with a lot of the guys in the band and makes total sense. But I was curious if we were going to see other people, which we didn't. Specifically somebody like a Butch Taylor, who plays with John Dirth still on a regular basis, and last played with DMB. Obviously, was pre-Buddy. Was the keyboard player. Yep. Through 2007, and had come back for the Charlottesville concert when the band played with Stevie Wonder, what ended up being Boyd's last show. And I was curious if we were going to see him. I'm actually curious, was he there? Was he backstage? We didn't see any photos of him, but, would just be interested to see if that would be the case. And also was interested to see if any other Virginia people were going to show up. But I think we got a great performance from John Dirth. Proudest Monkey, I think, would go on any tour highlight disc for what we've gotten so far. So Richmond was great. We transition to Saratoga now, but before we do, we had a lot of feedback that you all really enjoyed Matt's Merch Minute last week. So as we take this bridge from Virginia to New York, we're gonna have a quick second. We're gonna go through another edition of Matt's Merch Minute, which is going to start in Richmond. Night one, we got a poster from Methane Studios. I think this was the second or third Methane of the tour, which we know from previous years, Methane was doing a majority of the posters, and now has been brought back to only doing a few, and they actually announced those shows ahead of time, so we knew that this was coming. And they had kind of a cool image. And then night two, we had a poster from Brian Steely, who has done a number of posters in the past. He has a different style. It's almost there's a lot of lines in his work and patterns, and usually his posters are in sort of a different they're not 18 by 24, they're usually more like a rectangle, and that was cool to see as well. And then one thing that gave me a lot of hope for Guilford merch, because you all know how much I'm pining after official Guilford merch. There was Richmond merch. I believe you guys informed me that there was a shirt, there was a koozie, but we did not get a pennant or a blanket, correct?
No blanket.
Correct. Yeah, but we did get a sticker. There was a
sticker. Okay. So we have a sticker, we have a koozie, we have a shirt, but no blanket, no pennant like we've seen from some of these other shows. That would be fine if we get that in Guilford, right? Mm-hmm. And by the time you're listening to this, you'll know, because we'll blast it out on all of our social media platforms. But as we transition over to SPAC, we had night one a poster from NC Winters, which was quite a departure from previous things that we've seen from NC Winters. I think the last SPAC NC Winters was the Peacock poster from a few years ago. And there was also a Gorge poster recently, which had like these crazy like butterfly eye things. And so NC Winters is also is typically more of like a dark themed situation, but
this was very playful.
this was
it playful? Everybody
totally
looks stressed out.
yeah.
They look like they're ready for a show.
So this image is a number of different animals who are trying to hitchhike their way to the show after their VW bus has broken down.
Yeah, they got a broken
And
bus. They're
and
not
the
happy.
this one fox who is sitting on the ground is just really done with the situation. I invite you to go look at this poster because it was really fun. I thought it was
It's fun.
cool. And I think it was everything you're looking for if you're going to a show. There was also a weekend poster, which was Todd Slater, right? If I remember correctly. Todd Slater did a weekend poster, which was cool. And
Oh, that was beautiful, actually.
yeah,
It was a bird, an eagle. It
Yep.
was an eagle. Todd Slater, classic red. And it had it was over the trees that you see in SPAC, like the eagles over the trees.
we all know about the trees, Trisha.
Yes.
And they did not
They didn't
miss.
disappoint.
They did not disappoint this year.
So at SPAC there was a shirt, there was a koozie, there was a sticker, there was a pennant, and there was a blanket.
Yes.
So there was an abundance of merch. It seems like the big venues, the Deer Creeks, the SPACs, the Gorges are going to get all of that stuff, and maybe all the weekday 2-night stands will get shirts and koozies and stickers. But I think the biggest news in Matt's Merch Minute, the biggest takeaway from the past week, is that for night 2, and I don't think this has ever happened before, really cool poster image from Daniel Danger, who has done a number of DMB posters in the past. This one's a very cool image of a horse walking down kind of seems like a post-apocalyptic kind of abandoned street. Really cool poster. But Daniel Danger himself was posted up at the outdoor merch booth, right? And so you could buy a poster and you could shake hands with Daniel Danger and he would sign your poster. And I believe he also did a few doodles on some people's posters. So what a unique experience. I mean, that is so cool as a collector of DMB memorabilia and posters, and just what a cool takeaway from the weekend if you were lucky enough to snag a poster and have Daniel Danger sign it and shake his hand. I know that there are a lot of poster nerds out there who really would love to have that moment with any number of these artists who we've been talking about over the last couple of months who have done work for this tour. So really cool. That concludes Matt's Merch Minute for the week. But
Hit segment.
Hit segment.
It's a hit.
Hit segment. We all know DMB fans. We all love our merch. So I'm excited to catch up with you next week after Guilford to hopefully recap that merch. But more importantly, let's get on to the pod that Jane likes, award-winning venue for best all around, Saratoga Performing Arts Center, night 1. I'm gonna go down a quick side story here. So people meet me and they're like, what are you into? And I'm like, I really like Dave Matthews Band, right? And like that's cool. Like, how many times have you seen them? Oh, 100 and something, I don't know. And we have like a little bit of back for, wow, that's crazy, you've seen Dave Matthews Band, like that's kind of crazy. And then I tell them about my 3 friends, Trisha, Jeanette, and Sean, who had no intentions of going to SPAC. So of course, I'm looking at my calendar. I'm like, oh yeah, we're not doing SPAC. We decided that a long time ago. And then as the text messages are rolling in on Friday, they're just all on Friday, no tickets. They're getting in the car and they're headed to Saratoga. And I'm like, guys, we talked about this. And so I think there was even a conversation about potentially picking Saratoga over Guilford at one point. And I was like, guys, we've had these Guilford rooms for 6 to 8 months, and you all are getting in the car to go to SPAC. I'm like, what is going on? So anyways, these guys get in the car, no intention of going to Saratoga, head over to the Pod that Jane Likes venue, award-winning venue for best all around. And Jeanette, you got, I think, probably the show of the tour, if not a very close second.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think this is probably in the top 3 with maybe like Toronto and PNC and Homedale. But yeah, I mean it really it was definitely worth that sitting in traffic drive up the New York Thruway, not even sure if I'm gonna make it in time, not having a hotel. We had nowhere to stay.
You were like, it was like what? Like we were like getting ready, and then you're like, why am I dressed for a concert right now, Trisha? I'm not even going. And I'm like, well, why are you dressed for a concert right now, Jeanette? And then you're like, why am I packing? I don't know why I'm packing. I'm not even going.
This is such a true story. Like I woke up like I have to work. And I went down to my computer and I worked for like a few hours. And then I was like, why am I why am I not going to SPAC? I'm gonna go pack. Like I don't know how it happened. It just happened.
The trees were calling
The
us.
trees called us. We were all in the car. I mean, we were about an hour into the drive calling each other and like, we can't find a place to stay. But I was like, we'll figure it out. We don't have tickets. We'll get a tent. We'll get a tent. We didn't have tickets. We somehow managed to score 3 tickets on the lawn. We got there with plenty of time.
Yeah.
And we had the best time ever. And the show was definitely one of the best of the tour. I will say. I mean, what would you say? Opener was kind of out of nowhere, and I'll take it. And I mean, I think from that moment on, it just kept getting better, surprise after surprise. And we kept yelling, SPAC is back. SPAC is back. We kept yelling that the whole show. So yeah. What about you, Trisha? What was your highlight?
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you about my disappointment.
Disappointment.
Well, because I felt like night one was incredible. I thought getting pay for what you get. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about that song, but screaming that on the lawn, screaming idea of you on the lawn is great. Getting Cry Freedom, getting followed by a recently, getting a shotgun. I was like, we were on the lawn singing and dancing, completely just having the time of our lives. The next day, we go to tailgate, and I was hobnobbing, talking to people at tailgates, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you're from the pod that Jane likes? What did you think of last night? It wasn't that good, was it?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"What?" But it was we got that feedback so much that I was like, wait, I was there. What did I miss? I think that it could be translated as a pretty mellow show to some, potentially. First couple of songs, maybe a little lyrics messed up a little bit, but it's fine. Maybe it wasn't, people were looking for like bangers. And when you say SPAC is back, I think that's what I felt too. It was like, I felt like early 2000s Trisha was at SPAC. That's what that felt like. That show.
I just for fans like us, and I know that like I'm not gonna put fans in different tiers, but fans who followed deep cuts and fans who don't get to hear Shotgun all that often and Pay for What You Get all that often, that's a banger of a show to me. That's yes, those songs are mellow songs, but they're deep cuts.
They're deep.
And some people were probably chasing those songs and we're like, oh my God, I got my song tonight. So I could never look at that set list and say, I don't know what you think of last night. Ever. But to each their own. To each their own.
We'll pass it to, I'm sure you have a lot of stats on this, but someone's saying this after we're leaving a show where the set closer is Best of What's Around, and then they encore with the Stone. Like, but I looked around at that, on the lawn, and I don't know if people were like digging the Stone. I think they were looking for like an Ants, right? But us, we were like losing our mind. We're losing our mind. Right. So.
I think that this show is unique for a few different reasons. So it has the big moments, right? And we listed off what a couple of those songs were, whether it's Cry Freedom, whether it's Shotgun. When songs like that pop up, Cry Freedom can be thrown in that boat too. Mm-hmm. They end up being the songs that people are talking about for days or weeks, or even at the end of the tour, especially if these songs don't get into rotation, then you're looking at only 1 or 2 shows usually that they pop up at. So I think it's really easy to talk about those songs, and they should be talked about because, as Jeanette said, and she's correct, there's an awful lot of people chasing those songs. And for the people that aren't chasing those songs, they still don't get them with any form of regularity. So they're a treat anytime that you get them. What was really interesting about this show to me, those moments were great, but it was a lot of the other songs that maybe are in somewhat of a regular rotation that I thought really stood out and shined to me. Lover Lay Down being one of those songs. I thought that the performance of this particular Lover Lay Down was just really great. Another song that stood out to me, and this is not something that I say every time the song is performed, but I thought Cornbread was really good. I thought the Cornbread outro specifically was really good. I thought it had a very different, and I encourage you, if you weren't there or did not tune into the Friday night concert series, this is streaming in the SiriusXM app. There's a little bit of a different vibe to what was happening in the outro. I think a lot of that has to do with what Buddy was doing, and Buddy's playing off of Stefan. There was a little bit more of a jazz feel to it that isn't so accustomed to that song. I thought it was very welcomed. And I thought that regardless of what you think of the actual song, I think that this performance was notable and one that I would probably recommend checking out. The other thing that I think is worth noting is song placements. And in this instance, we're talking about incredibly well-regarded, some of the most elite material that the band has in their catalog. First off, we have to talk about the Best of What's Around, because this is the first time that it closed a set since 1993. So we were talking about Richmond a little bit earlier. So you have to go back to the days in which DMB was playing small bars and clubs and playing venues in Charlottesville and Richmond. That is the era in which this last happened. So unbelievably rare. I can't tell you how much a moment like that stands out to me. You can take this entire SPAC weekend, and that one particular performance, it was a fairly straight version of Best of What's Around. There wasn't any unique wrinkle that stood out to me that made it super unique. But as you look at the weekend as a whole, this particular song is one that really stands out as quite possibly the top moment, or one of the top moments of the entire weekend. And I think that's saying something when you look at some of these other songs that came out. So really fun moments right there with Best of What's Around. And then, of course, the Stone. Best of What's Around closes the set. The band walks off stage. There was a little bit of a guitar issue when Dave came back off or on stage for his solo performance. He performed Sister. And then we go into the Stone. It's the first time that it has closed an encore since 2004. None of us are in the room when these set lists are being written. However, there was something that felt very intentional, very deliberate about the set list writing in order to put those songs that are seemingly never in those particular slots, in those slots for this particular show. So this had a little bit of everything. It had some radio-friendly hits. Jeanette was talking about it opening with What Would You Say? It had an awful lot of deep cuts for people like us that chase this band up and down the country, really. And then it had some really great performances of songs that we get routinely. And on top of all of that, we get some fan favorite songs like Best of What's Around and Stone in places that most people have never seen them. So much to say about this show. It felt like a SPAC show. We've talked about and critiqued, broken down SPAC shows in the past. This one felt like a SPAC show, and shows that feel like a SPAC show are pretty special shows.
I think also worth noting that there were a couple of cuts from the set list, correct? Joyride and JTR.
Well, so just to clarify, so Joyride we know for sure was cut. JTR is more of a detective, a lesson in detective skills that people on the internet kind of took to, because on the original set list, Jeff Coffin posted the set list, there was a third encore song that was crossed out. People kind of up and down the internet took to trying to dissect what that scribbled out note is. And an awful lot of people, I don't know if we'll ever know what that song was, but there was a third encore song that ended up getting scratched for whatever reason. I didn't particularly pick out JTR, but a lot of people did. It was kind of the buzz all over the internet. Joyride, on the other hand, was actually on the set list. And unfortunately, it ended up being a scratch. One way or another, 2 scratches that we know of.
Yes. So 2 scratches. And I think the assumption was that those scratches would get played the following night. And surprise, surprise, that didn't happen. Neither song gets played the next night. However, the show starts hot as hot can be with PNP Two Step. We talked about PNP Gray Street opening up Richmond. PNP two-step. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That is a wild start. And again, to two-step being sort of a song that can be placed anywhere in a set, but having two-step at the beginning of a show is really special, and then sort of attaching PNP to that is great. I'm gonna let you guys talk about the show because you guys were there, but I did want to point out one thing. The first ever, I believe, Hung Garden Hose, I'm calling it. Hunger for the Great Light, followed by Seven, which, if you know, the working title for Seven was Garden Hose. So if you Hung Garden Hose. Hung Garden Hose, we're calling it. I have to say that
T-shirts coming soon.
I have to say this is not something that I hope happens again.
No.
But I just wanted to point out, like, when I saw that, I was like, oh, Hung Garden Hose. Yeah, it's like fish tender. It just rolls right off the tongue. Hung Garden Hose, fish tender. So that was part. I think the other highlight, and then I'll hand it over to you guys to talk. New song in the E1 slot, Take All Day, very sweet lyrics. And I think, from a theming perspective, I think we've all talked about this offline, sort of lays the foundation with a couple of these other songs of, sort of this general love conquers all theme, that would really, I think, be a nice compliment to Cha-Cha and Peace on Earth as, the foundation for what could be a new album. We never know with DMB. We've heard from the dawn of time that DMB is in the studio, and sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not. And sometimes we don't get those recordings for years and years, and sometimes there's a song that's 20 years old that we think is brand new that is actually 20 years old. So I just wanted to point that out. The Take All Day is, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's a really cool little song, and interested to see how it develops, and if it develops into a full band thing like Peace on Earth, and if it already has been, like, did it start as a full band song and now it's scaled back and it's gonna ramp up like Peace on Earth. So I'll let you guys talk about the rest of the show.
Okay, so I liked to describe the show as a sandwich. Okay. Because it felt like it started really strong. Two-step into Stay was, and we were like, stay in the 2 slot, like, that's crazy. And then, what you yeah, we'll get there. What You Are closing, and then getting a new song, which is just so lovely. I've listened to it about 100 times since Sunday, and I just think it's probably one of Dave's best love songwriting in a long time. I know he's done a lot, but this feels very intentional. It feels different. It feels interesting. And then The Last Stop. I mean, nobody's complaining about The Last Stop closing a show, but there were some high highs, but there were some low lows, and I just didn't feel like a SPAC show to me. Middle of the show didn't feel like a SPAC show to me. Hung Garden Hose. I mean, listen, I danced. I was dancing. I was having a good time. I was feeling love bombed by Dave because it was like a lot of love songs, Loving Wings, like, and then we got Pig, we got You Never Know. These are crowd favorites. These are our favorites. These are huge songs, but there was something just didn't take off. I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but something just didn't take off for me, like it did in the beginning and like it did at the end.
Yeah, I mean, every day looking for a vein, Jimmy Word Up. Like, here's the thing about this: it's not. It wasn't for me necessarily. And then, Hunger 7, do you remember Rapunzel? Rapunzel's a great song, but like in that slot, it wasn't enough in some ways. And then right. Steady As We Go. Picked up again with Pig and Loving Wings. Let's Dance was fun. Of course, What You Are, I just had a conniption. I was freaking out. But oh my God, it was so good. The new song was so romantic. I mean, and what was so sweet about it was at the end, he said, I'm going to keep working on that. Or something like adorable. And I think we had talked about this on the last episode, actually the last 2. I think, Jeanette, you were saying it. We were talking about Blackjack, saying like, come out here, play these songs, road test it and see how it evolves. And I I'm sure someone told him about the podcast that we said that. And, then he's like, all right, maybe I'll just try a new song out there. I don't know. But here's my takeaway from this. The show wasn't for me, but as I settled with myself, I was thinking to myself, when Every Day started playing, which isn't something I always need to hear, I saw like everybody get excited around me. Sure. Like younger people too. And if you think about, there was a video when that came out, like when they are showing things that mainstream people can see, people got excited. Yeah. We have a friend and a listener whose daughter's favorite song is Hunger. Well, I don't want to hear Hunger. Well, she dropped to her knees when she heard Hunger. So like, I was really trying to like think about how we got our show night one, and then night two was mostly for like just over a 2-night stand. Dave has to somehow occupy, or like everybody, all of these audience, the young, the new, the old, all of it.
By no stretch of the means was this a bad show. No. I danced my little tushy off on that lawn.
And it ended with Last Stop, which
sure
could have been, you could have played the phone book and ended with Last Stop, and it would have been
exactly my point. It's like, yeah, okay, like would I have wrote that set? No, but also like I love Loving Wings, and I'm so excited that it's back, and I love Steady As We Go, and these are all like really beautiful love songs. So I was like totally fine with it. It just didn't take off like I wanted it to. But again, not a bad show by any stretch of the means.
There were definitely moments. Mm-hmm. I think that there are a number of moments that stood out to me. I think to Jeanette's point, though, they're kind of on the bookends of her sandwich analogy. Mm-hmm. They're early, they're late. I did find myself kind of enjoying the late run as a whole. The show kind of concluded with this run of Pig, Loving Wings, Let's Dance, Space Between Why I Am, What You Are. Is it the strongest run of all time? I don't know that anybody's arguing that it's the strongest run of all time, but it's a run that I enjoyed. There's an awful lot that I like within that run. And I thought that the encore is probably one that will stand out as one of my favorite over the course of the entire tour. We got a brand new song debut that what's so interesting about song debuts is it is one of the most unique experiences that you can have to be at a venue with somewhere in the vicinity of about 20,000 people, and everybody is consuming one piece of art for the very first time together. There's not an awful lot of things that are quite like that. And that's what this moment was. I thought it was anytime, and we've all been fortunate to be at quite a few song debuts. There's something really special about those nights, and there's something special about the walk to your car afterwards, because everybody's seemingly talking about the new song, and you're talking about it on the drive home, and you're talking about it back at the hotel. It's
find videos of it on the phone so you can hear it again.
For sure. And regardless of if this song evolves into something or if it stays in this form, we don't know that. But it's a very cool moment to be a part of if you're ever fortunate enough to be at the debut of a song. And I thought that this one, for whatever it's worth, it seemed to land with an awful lot of people. People seem to enjoy it in the form that it is now, and people seem to really be excited for what the song could become. And quite frankly, I don't know what more you could want from a song debut. I think those characteristics, those impressions that people are leaving with are ones that are kind of a best case scenario when you're going to get up and debut something brand new in front of such a large audience. And then, of course, as it was already mentioned, we get a last stop, not just a last stop, but a full stop, the way that it should be. So happy that that's still in existence and out there in the world. So it was a really unique, in some ways, SPAC weekend, a traditional SPAC weekend in the sense that there were some really big moments that caught you off guard. But overall, I thought there was a lot to like about this SPAC weekend. Some highs, some moments that maybe weren't for myself or for us. But overall, I thought some really quality stuff out of Saratoga 25.
I really do hate any sort of hint that we're saying us or them and old school and not. I don't think that that's what we mean to say at all in any way. I just think that the 2-night stand catered to audience at different times. You're absolutely right. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think it does. And the only other thing I want to add, because we've talked about this before, and we actually had a couple people that came up to us over the course of the SPAC weekend and talked about this. But so often we are taking, especially when you look back in retrospect, you're looking at as the weekend as a whole, right? I think when you're in that moment, it's easy to look at one night and compare it to night two, or vice versa. But I think so many times when you're looking back at weekends like this, you're looking at the weekend as a whole. And I think when you're doing that, you're looking at it through a very different lens. So it's just something to keep in mind. We have a few more 2-night stands coming up. There are different ways to look at this. You could look at one night, you could look at 2 nights, you could look at individual runs. It's kind of what makes this so fun, right? There's something for everybody. There's different lenses for you to view these shows at. And I think it keeps it fresh and it keeps it fun.
Indeed. And that brings us to the end of SPAC weekend. We are so looking forward to Guilford. We're so looking forward to Camden. And then there's a big break in the tour until things pick up at the end of August, leading up to the Gorge Run and the end of the tour. So stay tuned for all of that. Now, guys, if you remember, the last time that we recorded together in the same room was also in my house. We were on a different floor. And at that point in time, we took some audience questions because we thought it would be fun while we're all sitting around here, sort of having one of our traditional fireside chats, that we would do the same thing again. So we're going to go kind of rapid fire here. Trisha's loaded up with questions from the people for the pod, and we are going to answer them as best we can.
Well, thank you, everybody who submitted questions. We're just going to have a casual chat and answer your questions. The first question coming from Jason Smith, 4449. Was there a song or a moment at a show when you realized your love for the band?
I realized my love for the band like well before I had actually been to a show. But I would say when you finally realize like, oh, this is going to be my life. I mean, it was my first show and they opened with Best of What's Around. And then from that moment on, I was like, this is where's that t-shirt? Because what are the other towns this band's in that I can drive to? And I mean, I literally bought that t-shirt and I looked at the back and I was like, okay, I could drive to Hershey, Pennsylvania. I could drive to Hartford, Connecticut. And that is exactly what I did. I was only 18 years old, but I was like, who's stopping me? Who's stopping me? Right. I can just go to more of these. I can feel that feeling again. And it was definitely, opening with the Best of What's Around. Like there's no better opener than that. I know, Sean, you have a similar experience because your first show that was the opener as well, right?
Yeah, it was. And it's funny because without knowing what your answer was going to be, that moment is probably it for me too. Yeah. My first show, I'd listened to DMB and been collecting tapes for quite some time before I actually made it to my first show. But that first moment of Best of What's Around, it will always stand out for me. I think when you put together scenarios in your head of what does a dream DMB set list look like, probably because of that moment, I always default to a Best of What's Around opener because it was so impactful to me. In addition, it wasn't a particular moment, but I do remember driving home that night and being absolutely floored at what it was like to experience Roy in person. And there were a lot of high moments in my first show, but there was something about experiencing what Roy did in person, stayed with me from that night on and kind of propelled me into wanting to make this more of a thing and get to more shows. And all these years later, I can't help but go back and listen to some of those tapes from my first shows, and those moments stand out to me. Kind of tough to sum up why. I'm not necessarily talking about any sort of sweeping solo or some epic version of 41. I'm just talking about the little things that Roy did, the way that he interjected himself into the music. It was the type of thing when you were at that show, my first show in this instance, it just kept happening. And special moments that all these years later, now we're talking 2 decades later, they've really stuck with me.
You don't have a moment?
My moment was going to be very similar. I didn't want to take up too much time.
Keep going.
Okay. All right. I mean, I was going to say my first song too, which was Warehouse. I was in the nosebleed section of the old Foxborough Stadium, and I could barely see anything. And I just remember, Dave playing. It was the stop time intro, so Dave plays the part, and then Boyd comes in with the dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, and the lights started going, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And that had been after, I think I told this story before on here about how for my first show, this was really like the first big concert that I had ever been to, pretty much. And I got my tickets, and on the ticket it said Dave Matthews Band, Santana and the Roots. Doors open at 5 o'clock. Music starts at 6:30 or something along those lines. So I was there like at the time the 4:55 when the gates. I was like, we got to get in there. So I go up and sit in my seat in the nosebleed section, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize that these bands are going to open, and like they're all going to play for like a good amount of time. Like the Roots are going to play for 45 minutes. Santana's going to play for over an hour. And like then we're finally going to get to it. And so, but yeah, I mean, like as you guys said, from that moment on, it was, I was hooked.
Yeah. Does anybody know mine? You're gonna know in a second.
The
trees. 2001 Seek Up, SPAC, and I will tell you, going back, just to touch on SPAC a little more, like we spent our whole tailgate under the trees, around the trees, and being in the lawn, which of course everybody wants to get off the lawn of SPAC. SPAC lawn does have a bad rap of it being a little overcrowded or tough, but when you look back from on the lawn and you see those trees, like there is something pretty magical about it. So that is my forever moment, and why SPAC will always have a special place in my heart. Okay, this one comes from the lovely ladies, who is actually our friend and listener, Tim McKay. This is the Instagram name for his chickens, just so you know, but it is our buddy Tim. Other than DMB and live concerts, what are some of your other interests and or hobbies?
I think if you're excluding live music, then I think that the next thing that I'm most passionate about, or probably passionate on the same level, is professional sports, Major League Baseball, to be more specific. It's something that has always been in my blood, and was a career of mine for quite some time. And outside of it being what my career was, it was probably the thing that I was the most passionate about for my entire life. I was kind of born into a baseball loving family, and in some ways, not only was the sport itself what I was passionate about, but it was also the way that myself and my family members really communicated with each other, for good or for bad. But Major League Baseball, the game specifically, I think it's the most perfect thing in the world, and I can't possibly ever consume enough of it.
So you must be like a Yankees or Phillies fan?
No, no, none of those things. No, I am a Seattle Mariner fan through thick and through thin. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time on this podcast to explain how tragic of a decision that was at an early age. But absolutely a top passion of mine.
I don't have any other hobbies. I only follow around the band. No, I honestly travel is my other hobby. It's usually around a concert, but I do love to travel when it's not, even when there's no live music involved as well. I've been almost all over the world, so traveling would probably be my answer.
I do not have one. I mean, I don't. What do you know about me that you think I have another hobby?
You're right.
Go on.
All right. I am also a big professional sports fan, Boston sports to be specific. And I am also a huge nerd. I love all things Disney, Marvel, Star Wars. Any sort of like nerd fandom stuff I am very much into. So
wait, I have one for you, Trisha. You're an activist. You love politics.
Hobby.
Well, I mean,
that's more like a bleeding heart that you can't turn off.
But it's a huge part of you.
Actually, because I'm an activist, I have to make the hobby of live music.
Well, sure,
There you
that's
go.
fair.
So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Not a hobby. Okay. What's your favorite tour stop? This comes from Roge 2E. Favorite tour stop? We'll go real quick.
It's back for me.
SPAC.
Guilford.
Of course. Okay. This one comes from the lyricist who we met at SPAC, and he said, "What was the first Dave song all of you saw live together on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3.
Bismarck.
Bismarck." Which is actually rare and weird that is the first song we heard together. We have been talking about Bismarck.
Yeah, as that happened in the Woodlands, if you go back and listen to our Woodlands recap, we said, would you ever think in a million years that after we started our podcast and we, got to know each other and we started, recording regularly, that the first show that we would be together, that the first song that we would hear was going to be Bismarck? Was just like, there's no way that was going to happen. So that's a great question. And I think an even better answer, because it was just so nuts. Like, if you go back and look at every opener that's ever opened a DMB show, and you look at the number of Bismarck openers, and you look at the number of Bismarck plays and all that, it's just crazy.
Amazing. Okay, this one comes from Andrew Hideki. Crystal Ball Time. DMB is playing their farewell show. It's a 2 to 3 night stand. What venue gets it?
I think it's got to be the Gorge. I think it's got to be the Gorge.
It's so far away from fans.
I know.
We would all go.
I mean, it is a. Having never been there, I know the like prestige that comes along with the Gorge, and I just feel like a SPAC would be great, but I don't think it would do it justice. I do think that if they ever did indeed do like a farewell kind of a thing, I almost feel like they would just play the big venues in some way. Like they would do like a 4-night stand at SPAC and a 4-night stand at Alpine and a 4-night stand, at the Gorge or something to that effect,
Really?
just so that everybody could get there, because I think that's the most important thing. You'd want to go and, I've said this before and I'll say it again right now. Go see the band that you're thinking about going to see, because you never know what's going to happen with band members leaving, with fights that might happen within the band, with like, it's not guaranteed that every band is going to be the same way that they are all the time. I've had several of my favorite bands lose members for various reasons, not necessarily, obviously in the case of DMB with Roy leaving us, that's one thing, but just bands who just have disagreements and say that's it out of the blue, and you have no idea that show you're at is going to be the last show that you're going to get to see the band. So
I think that's a great answer. I think that if it was actually drawn up where it was going to end, I think my vote would be that show or those collections of shows take place at John Paul Jones. I think that there's something to be said. It's not the Gorge, of course. It's not SPAC. It doesn't have the same history as any of those places, but the amount of history that took place within walking distance of John Paul Jones Arena, it would be impossible to overstate the significance of it. And I think that over the course of that weekend, if it's several shows that are taking place, I think the ideal scenario is to be able to grab a beer at Miller's and be able to pop over to Blenheim and be able to take a photo at the Pink Warehouse, to be able to do all those, DMB things while seeing the band that formed and grew and developed and wrote a huge chunk of this music in that town. I think we talked about it a little bit with the fact that DMB was going back to Richmond, and the Dave Matthews Band, they're a Virginia band. Yeah. That's what they are. Charlottesville and Richmond. It's where they formed, but it's also where they became who they are. It's where most of the songs that 35 years later, we're still driving around our cars and singing and introducing to new friends and to children. And, it all took place there. It all took place in this little beautiful melting pot of a town that is Charlottesville.
I was just going to say, I feel like there's no way they could do it at John Paul Jones because it would be too small. You'd almost have to do it at like the football stadium or something like that, like a venue. Where did they play concert for Charlottesville? That was at the football stadium. Yeah, that I think could potentially be the case too.
Okay. Next question. Favorite show of the first half of the tour? Go. This one comes from APHIL125.
Oh, SPAC Night 1.
Homedale.
Homedale.
I think I wasn't there for either one, but I'm going to say Homedale.
Ooh, still beating. How about I'm going to follow up question. Favorite 2-night stand?
Chicago.
Also Chicago.
Also Chicago.
I was going to say Chicago too.
Let's see if Guilford beats them or Camden. This one's a really hard question. I'm going to ask it anyway. You are allowed to pass if you need more time, and we will follow up on the next episode. This comes from Kels Duck. If each of you could ask Dave one question, what would it be and why?
You know, I have my list, right? I've got a list of so many questions, but the question I keep going back to so often in my head, and this probably wouldn't be the fan favorite question of like, what's number 41 really about? And like, no, right. My question is going to be, and I've said this many times before, what happened with Away from the World?
That would also be your question?
Yeah. Wow. Where is it? Where did it go?
What happened with Steve? Why was there a falling out? And why don't you want to play any of those songs? Because as we've talked about, a song like Broken Things is absolutely incredible and just has disappeared. And a song like Snow Outside is incredible and has just disappeared. And these are songs I think that are universally accepted as songs that are awesome and beautiful and that have disappeared. And so that would be my one question to Dave, because I don't think there's anything else that I could really like form into a question, like of just a standalone question like that. So yeah, what happened?
I think that point's so interesting because it almost feels like a lot of those songs never got the chance to become anything. We know of so many of them because of what they are on the record, but a lot of those songs now, I there are arguments that you could make that Snow Outside, for example, certainly had its moments during the 2 set years. There are some mind-blowingly good versions of Snow Outside from those 2 set years. If you haven't heard anything from that time period, you should check that out. Of course, I'm talking about the acoustic part of those shows. There's unbelievable versions of Snow Outside, but it just feels like, and there are a couple of exceptions, but those songs never, for the most part, got a chance to breathe and to find their potential of what they could be. Now, all of these years later, after that album has been released, the band has kind of evolved into a different band too. So I would be really, really curious to see what this band in 2025, what their take on a lot of that music would be, because I imagine it would be a little bit different than when a lot of these songs were first created and kind of made their live debuts. I have so many questions surrounding Away from the World. It's really the one record in the entire catalog that doesn't get any type of regular play at all.
Is that true?
It is. I mean, each and every year you can count. There's a few songs at best that find their way into the tour.
Sweet Drunken Soldier. I mean, these are Rooftop. They're all getting plays,
right? But those songs, but that's it. That's it. There's all the like. There's Broken Things. There's Belly Nice. There's Belly Full. There's Gaucho. There even Mercy that was played regularly. And I love, there's some great versions of Mercy with the Jam. My favorite one is with Mark Whitfield. He played on it a couple of times. I think there's an official release from that. These were staples and are just gone. And we talked about it early on the podcast of this tour. Away from the World didn't show up for weeks into the tour. Like there were, every night you'd look and it would be, Under the Table and Dreaming gets four songs, Crash gets 5 songs, Before These Crowded Streets gets 3 songs, Every Day gets 2 songs, Walk Around the Moon gets 2 songs, etc. And Away from the World just is starkly missing. Like there's no avoid, like clearly there is something there.
I let you guys rant about that for a little bit, just because there was actually several questions we got about that. Why do you think they don't play from Away from the World? What's your favorite Away from the World song? So Away from the World is on the minds of a lot of people too. And so if anybody's listening out there, it's not just us.
Away from the World.
Yeah, people want Away from the World.
Mostly just Broken Things and Snow Outside.
Yeah.
I will take Belly Button.
I'll take the riff too. Yeah.
If only. I'll take if only.
Yeah. All right. What's your question for Dave?
Mine would probably surround his political views and why. I mean, I think we know why he feels so strongly about how politics and the side that he's on. But I grew up in a pretty conservative Republican family, so I didn't have many adults. Not that like Dave is that much older than me, but he's older than me, and I didn't have many people to look up to, and so hearing his lyrics and hearing those songs were very inspiring and made me realize, like, oh, wait a minute, like where I come from is not necessarily what I'm being taught is not necessarily what I agree with after listening to things like this. So I think that that really inspired me politically and just in life in general. So I think that I would ask him what inspires him when it comes to that sort of thing, when it comes to his politics.
Same, kind of to piggyback, I would be like, do you know who you are? And I say that in a way of like, I know you're not God or Jesus or a prophet or a deity. Okay.
That went far. That went like.
No, I'm just saying, I know you're, I know, we all know you're not that, but you are something that like you do inspire a lot of people. You do impact a lot of people. People lean on Dave for guidance, even in terms of how to get through. And I actually, my question would be like, how does he stay grounded with that pressure? I'm sure he's aware that he has that impact in people's lives, but do you know? That's my question. Sean, do you have a question for Dave?
I just want,
you want also Away from the World. Riveting. All right, this is our last question. This is from our buddy David LaRue. Thanks for listening. Dave is one of our OG listeners from the very beginning, never missed an episode. Thank you for your support. And Dave would like to know, what are our hopes for the next 6 to 12 months for the podcast? I mean, there's a lot of hopes, but let's be realistic.
I think that we've dipped our toe into the interviewing process. I think when we first started this podcast, it was just about our love of the band, and having 3 friends to talk about it with, and realizing like other people maybe want to hear us. And then going out on the road and realizing that we're lucky that there's 4 of us and we have each other. Some people don't have one person to talk to. So we're that to them. So I would love to continue that. That's not something that when we got into this that I thought was the case. And that is so inspiring to me. And I would keep doing this if one person listened, but the fact that we have these listeners that are like, you guys are my best friends. Like, you guys are the people that I talk to about Dave. You don't hear me, but I talk to you about Dave. Like, I love that. But we did dip our toe in interviewing. We interviewed Clay Cook from the Zac Brown Band. We interviewed Rob Stevenson. We did a little bit with Ari from SiriusXM and Rodrigo, who's the band's photographer. I think that, getting more people on our show and finding more things out about the band, finding more stories out about the band that that we don't know and that listeners would appreciate. I think that's where I see us going. But honestly, just to continue this and continue being the 4 people that are your best friends in the car when you're driving to work.
I feel super fortunate that we dove into this whole podcast thing when we did, in terms of where the band was at in their history. In some ways, they provided content that made things easy for us, in the fact that these last 2+3 years, really, these tours have been really, really solid shows, very diverse, an awful lot of songs being played year in and year out. So I think for me personally, you're idea is a great one, Jeanette. Your suggestion to kind of continue down that road, that would be great. But I am just grateful and hope that it continues for the duration that you mentioned in the question, that we keep getting shows like this to cover. What's left of this summer tour, who knows what is coming beyond that. But if we step back and look at the next 12 months, I certainly hope that there's an awful lot of DMB in the same mode that they're in right now. There seems to be and this has been going on for quite a while now, these last few years, but they seem very invigorated in comparison to the way that things were once upon a time. It keeps things fresh night in and night out. It keeps us guessing. We have an awful lot to talk about. They sound pretty darn good. There's a lot to like about DMB right now. And I couldn't be happier at this stage in their career, all things considered. I couldn't be happier with where things are at, to be honest. Of course, there's a couple things I would change, additions I would make, things that I would like to be part of DMB that maybe once were and aren't anymore. All of those things considered, being realistic, I'm pretty darn happy with how things sound right now. I'm pretty darn happy with the way that set lists are being written. And hell, in this episode, we just talked about the fact that we like a lot of these new songs that have been written.
Right.
Check. I'm happy about all those things.
So Jeanette wants to continue down the guest route. Sean just wants them to continue playing to give us something to talk about at the same kind of rate that they are.
Matt wants to have another PTJL event.
Yeah. So do the people.
Yep.
Got some questions.
Yep.
When's the next event?
We would love to do another event. Our SPAC event last year was great, but we didn't realize how much work it was going to be, and I think we needed to take a step back before we continued down that road. So I think you can expect an event in 2026 from the Pod that Jane likes, and I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but definitely want to look at doing something, and we'll be excited when the time comes for that. But we really need to take a step back and figure out how we can make it work for everybody and how we can make it work for us as well, because it is a lot of work, and so much so that we had to pull back this year from doing it because it really took a lot out of us. So yeah, that's what I would like to see.
I mean, it took a lot out of us, and people that were there know it's because it was 104 degrees. I mean, I think,
but a lot of
it did.
A lot of it is the unpredictability of putting an event together, and we really need to hire people to do that with us. That was one of the mistakes that we made. We were trying to do too much ourselves, and that created a whole nother slew of issues and all that.
Yeah.
But also, we sold that event out, and I think that it just shows that we maybe need a bigger venue, and maybe we need, we have a lot of people that would come, so like that's a whole other issue. So there's definitely like challenges, but it's not something that's stopped. Like it's just we just needed a minute to like really think about where we want to go with our live events, but they're going to happen again.
Thank you, Dave, for that question. In the next 6 to 12 months, what really strikes me is when we go out to these shows and some of the DMs we get, like people really look forward to and enjoy this podcast, but not everybody knows about it. And I feel like the next 6 to 12 months, I really want to just build and get the word out about the podcast. Cause I think at this point, 100 and how many episodes, 6 episodes in, like we're really proud. People enjoy it. And I know that the more people that hear about it and tune in about the shows they went to will also enjoy it. So this is my message to all of you that are listening. When you like a post, when you share our content, when you comment, when you, tell people about it at shows, like that is how it spreads. When you buy a shirt and you wear it to a show and people see the name Pod that Jane likes, like that spreads. And that's what I want over the next 6 to 12 months to really build.
Awesome.
Great questions. I mean, there was a question about how did this podcast start? And I just wanted to take credit for that for a minute.
Okay, all right. Okay. That's another story for another day. And we are out of time. And we've got to be getting to Guilford, guys. We got to leave right now.
We gotta go.
The lake is calling. The car's packed. We're headed out. So we will talk to you next week, and then our schedules are going to go a little bit crazy. So for the month of August, you'll get sporadic sprinklings of the pod that Jane likes, but we're going to make sure we talk about Guilford and Camden, and then we'll be back in August at some point to talk more about DMB and everything else that is ahead. So look for that. And as we've said before, if you like what you hear, please follow us on all social media platforms. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. See our smiling faces on YouTube, and make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcasts from. This has been fun. This concludes the third ever Pod that Jane Likes live, I guess, all in the same room. Yeah, sort of like two sets kind of thing, like the acoustic pod. I don't know what it is.
I can't hold this in, but I feel like we did not record 3 times because we recorded twice where we were focused. The third time at the Woodlands, we passed a mic around drunk after a show. That does not count, does it? I don't know.
Listen, Trisha, nobody needs to know that.
Just saying.
There were a lot of good observations from that. Anyways, thank you for listening. We appreciate you so much, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.